impact of mental health on school safety, and the importance of forming local partnerships to manage school emergencies. Next, our Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy, partnering with the Ohio Department of Education, trained thousands of educators and law enforcement officers on identifying and helping troubled youth at risk for violence, and how to respond if an active shooter did come into the school grounds. While Attorney General, we also launched the School Safety Training Grant Program, giving millions of dollars to schools to help them with ongoing training needs. As governor, I took office with a plan to do even more for our children, starting with providing easier access to mental health services. Children's behavioral well-being is crucial for their long-term health. The work we laid out, 1, prioritizes prevention. 2, works to keep kids healthy and safe both physically and emotionally. And 3, supports families with early identification, intervention, and ongoing support. All of those things help our children in school. Let me go through some of the specific things that we have done. We've invested $84 million in children's hospitals across the state to expand their behavioral health centers. That is a work in progress. 2, we also worked with the Ohio General Assembly to create the Student Wellness and Success Fund. This fund was created in our first budget and continued in our second. It is now part of the school funding formula. This has been a $1.2 billion investment to provide funds for wraparound services for students, including prevention programs. This funding has helped launch 1,300 different mental health programs and train 6,500 educators and school professionals. And I thank the General Assembly, members who are here and not here, for their work on that. Since we made it part of the school funding formula, the Student Wellness and Success Fund will continue to help schools fund mental health and wellness programs to meet our students' needs. Let me just say that I urge today every school in the state of Ohio to re-examine how they are using these student wellness funds. We have great examples of how some of our schools are using these dollars to deal with mental health challenges. Great examples of success, great examples of innovative programs. And so I would ask every school board, every superintendent to take a look again at these wellness dollars. Legislature gave you flexibility, but I would ask you to examine those, particularly in light of the needs that our children have in regard to mental health. This money is available to help in this area and can have a real impact on helping our children. Next, when I became governor, Ohio did not have a state office focused exclusively on the safety of our schools, safety of our children. In 2019, we launched the Ohio School Safety Center and put it within the Department of Public Safety. Let me recap what this office does. It scans social media for school threats. And if they find them, they contact the school and local law enforcement. Second, it runs the state's free Safer Ohio School tip line. Some schools have their own tip line, and that's fine. This adds a state line for schools that don't have one. Next, it conducts free vulnerability assessments for schools to identify and help address any safety gaps. Next, to help with school security, I worked with the General Assembly to launch our new K-12 school safety grant program to give schools money to pay for important security upgrades. In fact, we announced nearly $5 million in grants for schools just a few days before the tragedy in Texas. I want to take a moment to commend Ohio's school officials, our teachers, who have worked very hard to prevent, avert, and avoid tragedies. They do this every single day. It is a partnership with us. They're the ones who are on the front line, and we thank them for what they do. They do all this while also working diligently to give our children every day a good education. Every day, our educators are focused on the safety of every child who walks through their doors, and they deserve our thanks and appreciation. Working together, we've come a long way to improve school safety in Ohio, and we must continue this progress. We have an obligation to do everything that we can every single day to try and protect our children. Tomorrow, I intend to sign the new capital budget bill, which includes an additional $100 million for our K-12 safety grant program. I worked with the General Assembly to secure this funding for public, private, and parochial schools. Let me again emphasize this. Any school child in the state of Ohio is in a school should be eligible, their school should be eligible for this money. And that is the way I asked the legislature to write it. That is the way they wrote it, and I congratulate them for doing that. These are all our children. This money can be put towards physical safety upgrades in school buildings, classrooms, perimeters, parking lots. The money will also go towards safety measures such as visitor badging systems, facility mapping, school radio systems, exterior lighting, door locking, and other things. We want every school in Ohio to have physical security measures in place, and the goal of this funding is to help our school districts with the cost of adding extra layers of physical protection. Let me also say that in discussions with the General Assembly, we agreed on the amount of $100 million. If we find, as we move forward, that is not enough money, we will go back to the General Assembly, and I'm sure working together we will be able to come up with additional money to complete the job if that is needed. Let me now turn to behavioral threat assessment training. We must also continue to strengthen our focus on the mental wellness of our kids. And we talked about earlier the number of things we've already done. It goes without saying that our teachers are among those who know our kids the best and can often tell when a child is struggling. But identifying a child who could potentially become violent isn't easy. The assessment of behavioral threats is a skill and a practice that takes training. I want our teachers to have the very best training that is available. So, we'll be offering training on a behavioral threat assessment model that is considered among many to be the gold standard in behavioral threat assessment training. And Ohio's educators deserve nothing less than this gold standard. We'll first train many staff at our Educational Service Centers, ESCs, in this evidence-based process for identifying, assessing, and managing threats and threatening behavior before they escalate to violence. Once we train ESC staff, they'll then go on to train educators throughout the state. It is a trainer training the trainers. This will be free training for any school that wants it, to help them meet also the statutory requirement under House Bill 123 of the 133rd General Assembly. This bill mandates that every public school serving grades 6 through 12 has a trained behavioral threat assessment team in place by March of next year. Again, our school staff members, particularly our teachers, are the people who know our students best, so it just makes sense to provide them with this evidence-based training to identify behavioral issues before they turn violent and to connect students to needed services before a crisis occurs. Our whole emphasis is on identifying students who need help. We're seeing too many suicides, we are seeing other mental health problems, and it's very, 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 very small percentage of those who have a behavioral health challenge that is not being treated may become violent at a later period of time. So this is a win-win in trying to deal with all of these challenges. I mentioned the Student Wellness and Success Fund earlier, that $1.2 billion investment for schools to use for wraparound services for students, including services to address mental health. Again, I encourage our schools to please take advantage of this funding to support your students' mental well-being. Now let me talk about House Bill 99. We're also going to significantly expand the work of our Ohio School Safety Center. Just a short time ago, I signed House Bill 99, sponsored by Representative Thomas Hall, which appropriates $6 million to expand the center, which again we created in 2019 as the first statewide office of its kind that focuses on nothing but the safety of school children and school staff. The funding appropriated through House Bill 99 will allow us to carry out Senator Frank Hoagland's vision to create a new safety and crisis division within the Ohio School Safety Center. This division will be primarily focused on developing and delivering school safety training for educators. The division will employ a chief mobile training officer who will be either a military veteran or a licensed law enforcement officer, according to the language of the bill, to oversee 16 new regional training officers. These regional training officers will focus on emergency management training in the Ohio Department of Education's 16 already established school safety support team regions. And, although it's not part of the bill, I've also directed our Ohio School Safety Center to expand its local community liaison from 5 positions to 16. While the training officers will focus exclusively on training, let me distinguish between the training officers and our liaison officers. While the training officers will focus exclusively on training, our liaisons will work with schools to secure resources and supports for emotional safety. They'll help with the school vulnerability assessment that identifying physical safety gaps, and they'll also work with schools on cyber safety as well. So in total, we're adding 28 new staff members to the School Safety Center. That's 26 more people who will work every single day on nothing but the safety of our schools. Let me talk now in regard to House Bill 99 in regard to the arming of staff. And to do that, we need to go back and talk about a little history. House Bill 99, as you know, also addresses the option, and it is an option, of arming school staff. Although this bill was in development well before the recent tragedy in Texas, that heartbreaking school shooting certainly increased the urgency to enact it. Since many Ohioans learned of House Bill 99 in the wake of the Texas shooting, I think it is important to detail the history on this issue. Over the past decades, Ohio law has detailed who may carry a weapon into a school safety zone. Ohio law has permitted 3 general categories of individuals to be armed in school, all of whom are employed to protect students and teachers. They are as follows: law enforcement officers in the scope of their duties, number 1. Number 2, security officers employed by the local school board for that school. And 3, and I quote, any other person who has written authorization from the Board of Education or governing body of a school to convey deadly weapons. Again, any other person who has written authorization from the Board of Education or governing body of a school to convey deadly weapons, end of quote. Now, when I was Attorney General, I expressed my support for school districts to use that third option to designate individuals to carry a weapon and provide assistance in the event of a threat. I must also add, though, if you'll recall, that at that time I said if I was on school board, my preference would be for a police officer, school safety officer. That was my personal opinion, and I expressed it at that time, and I still follow that. I suggested at that time that schools look at former law enforcement officers or military veterans, or to have a staff member properly qualified so that someone with significant training would fill this role. While the law at the time, our understanding of the law, did not address training for this third category of individuals, I advocated that a curriculum be developed so those responsible with securing our schools would have significant and relevant training in this area and would be prepared for potential threats. The ability of schools to authorize specific individuals to carry a firearm on school grounds remained the general understanding of the law in Ohio until last year, when a ruling by the Ohio Supreme Court basically made this option impractical for most schools. The Ohio Supreme Court ruled in a 4-3 decision in the majority's interpretation of the 2 Ohio statutes in this area. And let me just say, those statutes, and there was a potential conflict between the statutes. One could have read it that way. I interpreted it a different way as the Attorney General, but it could have been read that way. And the Ohio Supreme Court, in a 4-3 decision, interpreted the law as follows. In the majority's interpretation of the 2 Ohio statutes in this case, in this area. A person authorized by a school board to carry a deadly weapon in a school had to have the minimum training of a peace officer, which would be more than 700 hours of peace officer basic training or 20 years of documented law enforcement experience. So therefore, beginning about a year ago, that really became what the law is in Ohio. This ruling had the effect of taking the training of new school board designees sort of off the table as a viable option for school safety, because the more than 700 hours of peace officer basic training is simply, I think most schools would find unrealistic for their teachers and other potential staff. Now let me just say that those 700 hours of training are intended to broadly train law enforcement. And the vast majority of that training is not really relevant to school safety directly. For example, those training hours include driving courses, patrolling in a police cruiser, stopping vehicles in traffic, investigating traffic crashes, operating a radar gun. Those all are not really directly impactful in regard to a school situation. Requiring all these courses to allow for teachers and staff to be designated to help keep schools safe just wouldn't work for most schools. Not only did we need legislation to make training reasonable and accessible to school staff, but we also needed legislation to ensure that training was not just significant, but relevant to school safety and potential active shooter threats. In fact, the Ohio Supreme Court, majority opinion, the 4-3 decision, acknowledged that the legislature could change the law in this area. And the legislature did respond with House Bill 99. We worked closely with the members of the legislature and other experts to carefully craft the law to ensure that anyone authorized to carry a gun on school property would have thorough school-specific training. Let me talk about that. But first, let me just say what this does not do. It does not require any school in the state of Ohio to arm teachers or their staff members. Schools are not required to do this, and we've also already seen schools that have made that decision not to do it. We've seen other schools that have made the decision to do it, and we've seen a lot of schools that have not announced anything. But there's no requirement to do that. Every school will make its own decision. And again, I would say that schools that have school safety officers in those schools and have done other things may very, very understandably make the decision that that is what they want to do, and they do not want to arm anyone else. What the bill does is essentially reverts back to the prior practice of allowing local school districts to make a local decision on whether or not they will permit certain school staff members to be armed on school ground. This is a local choice. It is not mandated by the legislature nor by the governor. Each school board will determine what is best for their students, their staff, and their community. It's important to note that before the Supreme Court ruling, Ohio law was not understood generally to require any safety training for school board designated employees to carry a gun. You remember, if you go back, there was a distinction on those two statutes between those who had to have the full training, and those were people who were functioning in the school as a school safety officer. They had to have that full training. People who were not functioning primarily as a school safety officer did not have to have that training. Now, if a district chooses to arm staff members, the bill mandates up to 24 hours. The legislature said up to 24 hours of school-specific training for these individuals. This training will be focused training specifically tailored to those working in schools. This training will be carried out regionally by the new Safety and Crisis Division training officers we're now able to employ because of House Bill 99. This bill leaves it up to the Ohio School Safety Center to develop the training curriculum and determine how many of those 24 hours to require. I'm announcing today that I have directed the School Safety Center to require all 24 of those hours. I'm directing the School Safety Center to require the maximum number of hours provided by the legislature, which is 24. To name just a few topics, the bill requires our training officers to focus on de-escalation, crisis intervention, first aid, psychology of critical incidents, and it will include essential scenario-based training. Let me say this. Scenario-based training is important, and it's something that I have emphasized in training for many, many years. It's important that we expand that. Further, those authorized to carry guns in schools must have a criminal background check each year under the bill, and they're required to take up to 8 hours of requalification training annually. So I'm announcing today that I have asked the Ohio School Safety Center and ordered them to require all 8 hours each year. The training developed by the School Safety Center will be comprehensive. It will be quality training. We certainly understand that some districts may want even more training for their staff, and let me talk about this because the bill provides for that. The bill does not prohibit a school district from requiring more, which is why I've also directed the Ohio School Safety Center to develop and offer training that goes above and beyond what's allowed by law in House Bill 99. And I'm announcing today that I am asking them to develop additional blocks of training. Those blocks of training could be 6 additional hours. It could offer a school 20, of course, the 24. It could offer a school of 30. It could offer the school of 36, of 40. We will offer these schools in various levels of training, and they'll be up to the school to determine that they will have to do the 24. Let me just close by saying I remain committed to supporting and expanding our mental health efforts and services, and will continue working with the General Assembly on this. This has to do with adults as well as children. In the meantime, our schools have a valuable resource in the Ohio School Safety Center for one-on-one consultation on implementing a comprehensive school safety framework. Not only will schools receive feedback on areas of improvement, but our staff will help the schools implement these improvements step by step. Our school safety teams will also facilitate training in both physical and emotional safety for all school staff to ensure they know how to identify concerning behavioral and physical vulnerabilities. All of the services they provide interact to create a layered approach to school safety, from the physical safety of the buildings to ensuring staff are properly trained, to making resources available to care for the mental wellness of our kids. Ensuring that each layer operates in tandem with the others is so very important. Cooperation is important. And one of the things that we've always emphasized is the close working relationship between our local schools and our police forces and our mental health community resources as well. Also, school safety is everyone's business, not just the school professionals. If parents or citizens see something, they should say something. If they see something on the internet, if they get something home from one of their children in school that indicates a child in school is a problem, they should speak up. People need to speak up. It is the responsibility of everyone. I'm committed to continuing to do all we can to be a resource for our teachers, administrators, and other school staff to help protect our kids. I want to thank the General Assembly for their support of these school safety measures, particularly Representative Hall and Senator Hoagland, who are here today. Let me now welcome Lieutenant Governor Houston to say a few words. He will be followed by Representative Hall, then Senator Hoagland, and then we will take questions. Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Governor. I think as you can conclude from the Governor's remarks that this is a lot more than just one piece of legislation, that there is a comprehensive strategy that involves law enforcement, education personnel, the administration, and many others to focus on a package of ideas and strategies for keeping students and teachers, school personnel, all of our schools safe. I want to emphasize the mental health aspect of this, of helping to identify students who could do harm to themselves or others. Building a system, as we have and tried to resource it, to help with schools with that can be the greatest service that we can provide in preventing harm for any student in any school. I just want to emphasize a couple of things that the Governor said. This is optional. House Bill 99 provisions for schools and school personnel. No one, no school, no teacher, no administrator should exercise their option to get the training and provide them access to self-defense tools in a school setting unless they're completely trained, prepared, and are ready to go. I know that in some school districts, the community, the school itself, will decide that this is not something that they want to do. But I know that there are many schools in places like where I grew up that will embrace the opportunity. I've talked with teachers and administrators who do not want to be denied the opportunity to protect themselves and their students, and this law enables them to do that. That they don't want to be a victim, that they do want to be prepared to defend themselves. And I want to emphasize the relevance of the training involved here. I spent a day observing and participating in, to some extent, scenario-based training for schools. I learned a lot, and I know that that the training that's going to be put in place will help prepare for a variety of scenarios that can occur in those settings. That's why the scenario-based training is so very important. I will also state that our Innovate Ohio team has been working with the Department of Public Safety to continue to pursue more technology solutions to help make sure that only law-abiding citizens are getting access to firearms, and that those who are not allowed do not get access, and we'll be talking more about that soon. But I want to emphasize the fact that Governor DeWine has led a comprehensive effort on this for a very long time, both as Attorney General and as Governor. He's built a team who cares a lot about this, and today's announcement is just one more step in that package of helping to keep our schools safe, so that we can focus on creating an environment where the maximum amount of learning can occur, and our children, families, and teachers, administrators can feel safe in their school districts. I will now turn it over to Representative Hall.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Husted, Senator Hoagland, and each of you for being with us today. I am so honored to be with you all today. Since introducing House Bill 99 last February, I present to you Dash 18 version of the bill, the version that has been signed into law today. This is a bill that has been through some very contested committee hearings and 4 speeches. It is important to note lawmakers from both sides of the aisle all want the very same thing: to protect students and staff and schools all across Ohio, to ensure that no parent is afraid to send their child to school. After the horrific event that transpired in Uvalde, Texas, constituents and even many lawmakers were advocating for, and I quote, to do something. I am proud to be a part of this moment of, in fact, doing something that will without a doubt protect students and staff. After many conversations and collaborations, I am proud of the final version we have that is now officially signed into law. Through House Bill 99, we are empowering local school boards to make decisions to keep their students and staff safe. We are giving permissive authority while setting a minimum amount of training, but not a maximum. By establishing and working with the Ohio School Safety Center and the Ohio Mobile Training Team, I am confident House Bill 99 is the right solution for schools here in Ohio. This is by far the most important day of my legislative career, with getting such a historic piece of legislation signed into law. It is also a special moment to have my father with me, Kent Hall, who is the school resource officer and was there at my alma mater the day our community experienced the school shooting at Madison High School in 2016. He responded in 7 seconds that day to the lunchroom where the shooting occurred. And in these situations, we know that seconds matter. By allowing school boards to have this practice, we are empowering them to provide an additional option to their school safety plans. Today is a great day for the state of Ohio and a step in the right direction to protect students and enhance the school safety right here in our great state. I want to again thank the leadership of Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Husted, my colleague Senator Hoagland, Senate President Huffman, Speaker Cupp, and our colleagues in both chambers. Today is Ohio doing something, and I'm grateful to see this bill get signed into law. God bless all of you. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Senator Hoagland.
Okay, let me sneak in here. Well, I'm not going to recap on everything that the governor, lieutenant governor, and representative already said. I'm pretty sure that they already hit the nail on the head for everything that needs to be said in that category. But I'd like to go ahead and, me being a military guy, kind of narrow it down into the next step here. So the mission, create a component that will enhance school security, ultimately saving lives. This mission belongs to DPS. Director of Public Safety is charged to employ these highly trained personnel. These individuals need to have a professional background developing curriculum, training, critical thinking, problem solving, and mentoring. Personnel that already have a resume, not somebody that needs to build their resume. We need a team of individuals whose sole desire is keeping Ohio children in schools safe. I expect nothing other than the best of the best to make up this MTT team. Our future generation is counting on this to be very successful, very much like the Air Marshal program that I had the opportunity to be part of. A program that took on the security burden for our airlines, thus allowing pilots to fly and support personnel to do their work and logistic personnel to focus on their mission. The selection of the training chief and all the training officers is extremely important. We need a set of fresh eyes on this problem, people that are willing and capable of carrying out this mission. This team of individuals will help school boards out with their selection of personnel, the development of their curriculum, and staying focused on what needs to be done for their schools should they choose to do this. We'll also help take the burden off the principals, the superintendents, to ensure that they give the best guidance and direction on putting together their safety programs. Empowering the faculty personnel with their decision-making process while under stressful conditions as though people like me that have been in. And I pray that DPS makes the best decision for our kids. Thank you very much. Thank you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Representative Hall.
Be happy to take any questions.
Governor, can a school district set a standard lower than the 24 hours and
No.
not go through the school safety?
Not if they want to arm a police officer.
So in the bill,
The bill says it can't go above 24. I think, that's what the way the legislature wrote it. I'm taking the maximum. I'm saying it has to be that. We could have picked a lower number. I'm not doing that. I'm going further and saying that some schools may want to exceed 24 hours, and we will give them easy to understand units of what they will be getting if they go beyond the 24 hours. We think the 24 hours we can accomplish, a lot can be accomplished in that 24, but we want to give them the option to take it to a higher level. It's the same way with the 8. I took the maximum there. If you look at the language, it says, cannot exceed. I can't make it more than 8. I can't make it more than 24. But we can give options out there. Now, we can't require that, is what we're saying.
and can a school district go anywhere other than the school safety center for training?
Yeah, if it's approved. If it's approved by the school safety center, because, this is a big job, a lot of people. And so if they, the private sector can certainly get involved in this. But again, we have to approve their curriculum.
And whatever that is, aside from the safety center, to be approved, it has to be 24 hours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they got the 24, and we have to approve the curriculum within the 24.
So they couldn't go to a separate training institution approved by the school safety
No, they could.
They could do that, but if they do that, do they still have to reach the 24 maximum that you said?
Oh, sure.
They can't.
They sure, no. That's, everyone will know that the 24 is the standard. So if you're a private nonprofit or profit, whatever, and you design a program, we're not going to approve it unless it's 24 hours, you know. And we're going to be very careful and mindful to also give schools, as I said, options of other chunks. And again, that information will go out into the private sector too. I mean, this is a huge job. We are training trainers. So, you know, well, excuse me, we're not, I'm mixing up the other thing we're getting to. But, you know, as far as these individuals being trained, again, it is, we're taking the maximum, 24 hours. We don't know what the demand's going to be. So it could be there's a market out there, and it could be there's not a market for it. But, you know, we will see.
Is the 8 hours that you're requiring annually, is that the concealed carry permit training, or is
No.
this in addition to that, and is that also done
No.
by the resource center?
Yeah, it's the same. It'll be the same thing. It's not. It shouldn't be confused with the. I mean, it might include some of the same things. It might not, but it shouldn't be confused with that. It's different.
So I wanted to ask about what we've learned in the past 24 hours, and that includes the U.S. Senate introducing a package of gun control measures and mental health aspects as well. One of the things concerning you
Okay.
that what we're doing here is making access to guns easier rather than harder, and that seems incongruent with what the U.S. Senate's poised to do.
Well, look. I don't want to quarrel with you, but first of all, we don't have a bill yet from them. We have a general idea. It doesn't look like it's gun control. There's a great deal of emphasis put in on mental health. I would simply say that, you know, the things that they have outlined, if you're asking what my reaction is to it, we are always open to help in these areas. These are areas that we are already moving on and have been moving on, particularly in the area of mental health. If they want to send additional money in here, you know, for mental health, that's fine. We'll have to see what the specific language of the bill is. So, you know, that's fine, but they don't have a bill yet. So,
I guess just to follow up, the conversation though seems to be on restricting to access to guns, and with these two measures, constitutional carry and Senate Bill 91, we're essentially easing that access.
look, let me answer it this way. If you go back and look at these school shootings, you know, the two bills that you're talking about don't have anything to do with them. You know, what we're talking about is people who are outside the law. What we're talking about is people who are breaking the law. So these are criminals. So yeah, we have to make a distinction between the citizen, the good citizen, and the citizen who's broken the law. Who else?
Governor, if heaven forbid there's an incident that takes place in a school where, let's say, a teacher who's now going to be armed goes ahead and shoots the wrong kid, would you take any accountability knowing you could have stopped this by not signing this bill?
In life, we make choices. And we don't always know what the outcome is going to be. What this legislature has done, I've done by signing it, is giving schools an option based on their particular circumstances to make the best decision they can make with the best information they have. That's all any decision maker can do. I have said that this is an option. It's not required. Second, I've said consistently since the time I was Attorney General that if I was on a school board, I would do everything within my power to be able to find the resources to have a school resource officer in this school. Why? Well, for a lot of good reasons. One is a relationship. School children have the opportunity to see a police officer, whether he's undercut, whether he's in plain clothes or not, or she is in plain clothes or not. They have the opportunity to interact. That is generally a very positive thing. Second, school resource officer can be a mentor, can do that role. Third, school resource officer is someone who has training and who is in that school. So it seems to me and can react to a problem. So it seems to me if I was on a school board, that would be my preference. Now, some schools may make a decision that they want to blend that with making some strategic decision about someone else being armed in that school. If you go back to what I said when I was Attorney General, I said I would look for, if I was on a school board, I would look for someone with military training. I would look for someone who had some other background in that area. I will say this, that whether it's a school safety officer or whether it is a teacher, that the curriculum that we're going to lay out will be relevant to what they're doing. And so in life we face choices, and everything that we do, everything I've talked about this morning, everything we've been trying to do, everything we've been doing, the mental health side, and we use the word, I use the word layering. We're trying to layer this in and give every school the tools that they need. Ultimately, that school is going to have to ensure the safety of the child. They're going to have to do the best they can. My job is to give them the best I can to help them do that. And what we've outlined today is a very aggressive plan to do that. And you'll notice I was very mindful about putting all this together, because I think that to look at the signing of Senate Bill 99 and the potential arming of teachers as this whole thing is not accurate. This is a very nuanced approach. We have to do a lot of things. We have to do it every single day. Schools have to practice it. Schools have to be comprehensive in regard to that. It's a shame that's where we are today, but that's where we are. That's what we're laying out today.
To follow up, the argument of the way to stop a bad guy with guns is to give a good guy with guns.
Look, it's not that simple. With all due respect, no. Look, don't. With all due respect, don't give me a quote that's not my quote. I'm not going to buy, that's not what I said. I didn't say that. What I said is we're trying to give resources to. So go ahead, follow up. I'm sorry.
So that was a talking point that was brought up after the Uvalde shooting. And
Well,
I would say to you-
there's a million talking points brought up.
Okay, well, so there were 77 minutes in between the time that the good guys with guns.
Look, that is a very,
So what do you say to that argument?
look, as more facts come out in regard to that, and there should be clearly more facts come out, we want to know exactly what happened. I think that this is not, we had a great shift a few years ago in the best practices. And look, all we can do is try to get the best practices and the best ideas into our schools and into our law enforcement. The way law enforcement were trained to deal with a school shooting dramatically changed. The first thing was you treat it as someone who's in there armed, and you wait and you pull in your SWAT squad and you then go in. It became evident that in the majority of school shootings that doesn't work. It doesn't work because the deaths occur very, very quickly, and so the consensus. Strong consensus, and the way police officers have been trained for now a number of years is you go in and you eliminate the shooter unless there's some other facts that you're getting. You go in and eliminate the shooter. That clearly was not done in Texas.
Governor, two things. The first one is, will there be or is there a requirement of hours for the tactical live training with a actual firearm where people will actually need to hold it? Is there going to be a maximum or minimum time that somebody has to do that?
That will be determined by the school safety office, and we will be putting those out when they get those ready.
Okay, and the second one is for Senator Holden. Will your business be directly benefited by this bill, considering the only that fits all the outlined potentials for training?
Absolutely not,
And why is that?
because I said so. I own the business.
Okay, so will you be donating that money for mental health then?
Young lady, I don't know what money you're talking about.
So will you not accept people to train with your business then?
I think we already covered that.
It's a no, you're not going to be providing training to school districts?
No, my business is not providing training to school businesses or schools.
Anybody else?
Governor, did you give any, given your position, preference, I guess, for school resource officers, did you give any thought to legislation that would have allow
Yeah.
Just leave it to the experts, training law enforcement
Yeah,
personnel.
we looked at that and we did the math. It was, and you know, the option, we decided to go this way. There are, in the public school system, over 5,000 school buildings. And I don't know what the number would be in a parochial school and other private schools, but that was the decision that was made, so. Life is full of choices, and, you know,
Governor,
well,
I know that you've insisted that this will be relevant and thorough training, but, I mean, can you honestly get enough training done in 24 hours? I mean, the high schoolers that these teachers are gonna be protecting have to spend more time behind the wheel to get a license.
Look, first of all, schools are not required to do it. Second, teachers are not required to do it. We have had requests from schools to allow this to be done. There's also some, let me say, guessing that guns are already in schools. And look, we want to provide a regular mechanism to get training. And again, what legislature has provided is, I've required the maximum that the legislature allowed me to require. We are going to make it very easy for schools. If they say, I want that school person, I think this is the person that we want to have a gun. They want to have a gun. The school then can say, 24 hours is not enough. We want to take what our office will establish, the school safety office will establish as a higher unit, and they will be able to pick a higher unit. Yeah, go ahead. Let me. Lieutenant Governor.
I had a conversation with a school administrator post Uvalde, and they talked about the fact that it was a long time before help arrived, and how they wouldn't want Ohio law to deny them the ability to defend themselves and their students. And emphasizing again, there's no requirement that any school or anybody who doesn't want to participates, but there are a lot of voices out there who don't want to be a victim, who are capable of having the ability and the training to defend themselves and their students, and they want to have that opportunity, and this bill simply enables them the ability to do that.
Is there data that would suggest that this type of training, arming the teachers or other staff, would have quelled school shootings?
I don't think there's any data on a lot of things. What we're dealing with is anecdotally what we've seen in regard to school shootings, and the state of the understanding of school shootings has evolved and will continue to evolve in every single case. Every case is different. You learn from every case that occurs. I think the jarring thing to come out of Texas, besides the initial shock of the horrible, horrible tragedy, was the time lapse between the police officers. That's a new piece of information. Again, it's a new educational thing. There will be more facts come out. There'll be more timelines come out, I would hope. I hope there will be a thorough investigation of what happened down there, and we will learn from that. So, coming up with statistics, I don't think, you could do hypothetical models, but I don't know that you could come up with any kind of answer to that question. I think we are charged with giving the schools the tools that they need. We're also charged with not denying them tools that they think they may need. And we have to be very mindful about that. But we have to do it, since we have schools that want to do this. What we're trying to do is do this in a very mindful way so that we can give them meaningful training. And this is, as Senator Oakland has said, it's a grave responsibility on public safety and on the school center.
Governor, it was said after the Dayton shooting.
No, I mean, that's just somebody who hadn't talked. Who's?
Okay, so I wanted to ask
Yeah,
about
sure.
the red flag component
Sure.
of the Senate deal. Is that something that interests you, given that there could be funding in the state? And also, I was wondering if you think
Yeah.
is particularly relevant in light of all of these recent events?
Well, look, let's talk about that for a moment. Thank you for the question. We had in our initial proposal something that we did not call red flag, but it was a provision that we felt was clearly constitutional, clearly consistent with the Second Amendment, and that would have made it easier and provide a better mechanism for a determination by a court that someone was dangerous to themselves and or dangerous to the public, and through a due process system that we would set up in that proposed bill, we would have seen people who, family members, for example, which is usually what the case is, it's the family members who are the most concerned because they're closest to the person, to be able to go into a court of law and be able to have those guns taken away after due process. That was a proposal that we put out. It's a proposal that we still think is constitutional. We still think it's consistent with the Second Amendment. Since that time, let me just mention some other things. We had one of the things that's been talked about is the straw purchase. We had, if you'll recall, in the package, a provision that basically said if you are involved in a straw purchase, either on either side of that deal, knowingly that's what it is, we should increase the penalty in Ohio. We still believe that. I still believe that. I still believe that that's something that this legislature could pass and should pass. We also had a provision in there, and when we talk about school safety, we really are talking about the safety of children. And we're seeing a lot of children who are killed not in school, but in their own homes, on their own streets, and they're killed by violent offenders, and they're usually repeat violent offenders who are shooting randomly or shooting at somebody, and the kid gets in the way. We have a provision, Senator Kaler, or Representative Kaler, has a bill which we support, which is consistent with what we proposed at that time in that package after the Dayton shooting as well. I hope that the legislature will pass that. It simply puts additional penalties on someone who's a repeat violent offender, is using a gun and doesn't have any right to use a gun. So anyway, those are some of the things that we have that we would think would still be viable. We think this legislature could pass, and we would call the legislature's attention to it again. Those are all things that are very, very positive things, and some of them are in different stages.
Senate Bill 215 takes effect today. There's been a lot of confusion among law enforcement agencies, particularly as it pertains to the duty of an officer to ask someone now if they had.
Look, every police departments that
What do you have to say to these municipalities that don't know how to interact with this new law?
police officers and departments that I have talked to have all told me that their protocol will simply change to make sure that the officer asks that question as far as the first several questions that are asked.
And they don't feel safe. Some of them, they've spoken out on this at multiple hearings. They don't feel safe having to ask that question.
Who else?
Governor, it was said up there by Representative Paul that today Ohio is quote unquote doing something. Of course, that goes back to what was said after the Dayton shooting when there were members of the crowd that said quote unquote do something. Do you feel that what you're doing today is exactly what those people intended you to do?
I don't know. My job is to try to do things, and we have done. I outlined them for you a moment ago. We have done a number of different things. What I didn't mention, for example, another one that we have done without legislation. Another thing that we have done is by talking to local law enforcement, we've gone from about 10% of the outstanding warrants that are entered into the national database to 85% now. There's a bill that I would like the legislature to pass which would mandate, if this is a serious crime, that a police within a 48-hour period of time or whoever is involved would have to put that in the national database. Again, it's a bill that can pass. Again, it's a bill that should pass. But not having that bill passed, we still have been able to go from 10%, roughly 10%, to roughly 85%. And so now you have a situation where someone who is an offender who has an outstanding warrant in Cincinnati, when they cross the river or go into Indiana or they go into Kentucky, the situation now is if they go to buy a gun, or the situation was before, they went to buy a gun, the gun owner, store owner, had no idea that they had an outstanding warrant and could not be given a gun or sold a gun. Now, we moved from a 10% to 85%. So these are all positive things that we have been able to do. And we also have, again, pending in this legislature, things that I believe the legislature will find, if they look at them very carefully, are consistent with the Second Amendment and are consistent with constitutional rights, but that will improve safety. So let me make it very, very clear. We are trying to do and have been trying to do every single day things that keep people safer, keep kids in school safer, but also these same children who go home to neighborhoods where there is violent crime and repeat violent offenders, their lives are important too. All children's lives are important. So we're going to keep doing this. There's nothing more important to me than protecting children. And we're going to continue to do this as long as I'm governor.
I think for Senator Hoagland or for Representative Hall, permitless carry, of course, does take effect today, but the decision was made in this bill to require the teachers to get a CCW. Why was that? Why did we treat that differently?
Very good question. When we looked at what was going into the bill as far as the specifics on the 24 hours, specifics on the annual training, we realized that we want to make sure that we're providing the most important parts of the training to the teachers. So we decided to put that in to make sure that we were fulfilling our duty, to make sure the teachers are getting the correct amount of training, to have that actual firearm training, which is in the bill, to have a simulated firearm training. And there was a question asked earlier about the number of hours. Since I introduced this last February, we've had conversations with schools from all across Ohio, and they all do things differently. They all have different number of hours. There's not a perfect number of hours that we found in doing our research with talking with schools from the inner city, talking with schools from rural Ohio. But we came up with this number. We came up with this certain specific standards that we felt like was important for all teachers that are going to be carrying here in the state of Ohio to have. And that's why we decided to come up with that. The number of hours, it was not we pulled out of a hat kind of thing. We actually did a lot of research into what schools were doing already in Ohio before the Supreme Court decision, and that's why we came up with the provisions we put in the bill today.
What's that number, Representative? The hours of, you're talking about within the 24 hours, there's a measure of gun training?
Yes, there is. We're still working with the School Safety Center to develop that plan. Once we get the plan specifically developed with the direct number of hours for each specific thing, we're happy to share that with you.
Let me say something, and this is not speaking obviously for the legislature, this is speaking for Mike DeWine, governor. It's hard for me to envision that any school will be arming a teacher who's never had a gun before in their hand. It's beyond my comprehension. So I think schools are going to be very mindful of who they give this responsibility to, and then the 24 hours training on top of that. But I think they're going to be mindful of who they do. This is a serious decision, but it's also serious, and it would be, I think, negligent for us to deny schools the ability to make those decisions too. So thank you all very much. Thank you. Good job.